Okay, welcome to our next panel, Offshore Banking and Investments. And on this panel, I have Damani Barham, David Doss, and Carl Seelig. And for introductions, Damani Barham. Damani is founder of Apex Capital and has a background in wealth management, focusing on entertainers, entertainment executives, athletes, and high net worth individuals at Morgan Stanley Wealth Management and TD Ameritrade. David Doss. David is a growth oriented strategic marketing executive with over 11 years of experience in building revenue and developing audiences for startups, SMEs, and enterprises working on digital transformation. He is the founder of King Capital and is head of marketing, growth advisory, and investing at Treasure Pledge. And I believe we have Benjamin Galinsky on the line, and he is the owner of Advanced Merchant Group. And if you guys would like to speak a little bit more about yourselves, Carl Seelig, CEO of Chain BLX, is your moderator today. Over to you, Carl.
Hi, thank you very much. And I hope you understand me because social distancing and we have to be close together because of the camera here. So Benjamin was not yet on the schedule. He will be on the updated schedule. Let's start with David Doss. Can you introduce yourself a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. I have a background in international background in technology, communications, and social movements. I studied grassroots decentralization movements globally when I was living in Germany, Russia, Morocco, Indonesia. I've also worked with major fintech and cryptocurrency companies, including Citibank's financial technology division, the Gemini crypto exchange, and several other top blockchain and cryptocurrency projects. I'm particularly excited about the power of financial technology, blockchain, cryptocurrency to create value internationally, more value, more wealth, more possibilities for a wider variety of people and institutions.
Thank you. Damani, sorry.
Yes.
Please.
Sure.
You know where Damani always comes from my background. I apologize. Now it's a half a year that I call you always wrong. Unforgivable.
No problem. So my background originally was in entertainment. I spent the first 15 years of my career in the music industry, beginning as an intern with Destiny's Child, and then later working in their marketing department. From there, I worked with Sony Music in their distribution division. I've also worked with Universal Music and their subsidiaries in different capacities, ranging from A&R to marketing, which took me from Dallas to New York to Atlanta. After my music career or career in the music industry, I pivoted to the entertainment industry, so specifically television and film, as an agent, which brought me here to Los Angeles. And during the time that I spent in the entertainment business, the latter half of my career was during the period where there began to be a shift and more of a relationship between Silicon Valley and Hollywood in terms of startups looking for celebrities to endorse their platforms. And those conversations led me down the path that eventually led to Morgan Stanley. And with my working relationships with different celebrities, we started working on launching different venture capital funds and different celebrity-driven entities within finance. And at Morgan Stanley, I was able to cultivate or hone those relationships, really find my focus, which eventually led to alternative investments, which led to the launch of Apex Capital.
Thank you. And you're also no stranger to Davos.
Yes,
Morgan
I was
Stanley
fortunate enough to, while I was at the firm, I was fortunate enough to attend once with one of the executives. So that was an interesting experience.
Yeah. So Benjamin, just like 2 words about yourself.
I'm Benjamin. I'm founder of Ethical Mining Association, now Board Ethical Mining Association. We employ technologies to allow global companies that invest with us. We invest in mines, and we help avoid negative brand imaging associated with inhumane labor, slave labor, and government corruption.
Thank you very much. So let's start with a question, why offshore banking? So you all have in the panel experience with offshore banking. You all have funds which are offshore. And you have, of course, a choice from multiple jurisdictions and multiple locations, from Delaware to Switzerland to everywhere. Please give me, why are you interested in offshore banking? Let's start with Damani.
For me, the advantage or the attractiveness of offshore banking is, and I don't want this to come off in the way it may sound, but it's an opportunity to really operate without restrictions that come with operating in the States that may hinder growth. So when a lot of people think about offshore banking, there's a negative stigma on it, and a lot of people unfortunately do operate under those stigmas. But the big advantage for a lot of fund managers is the opportunity to not only operate without restrictions that may hinder performance of business, but also it's an opportunity to expand. So for example, it gives us the opportunity to expand our investor base. Certain investors overseas cannot invest or work with us if in our stateside funds for various reasons. So it just gives us the opportunity to expand our business on an international scale.
Thank you. David.
Yes. So there, for King Capital working in cryptocurrency, there are a couple of different considerations. I think as a whole, certainly offshore banking, has these stereotypes, both positive and negative. But in the greater sense, the honest companies of the world, we use offshore accounts to facilitate ease of access to capital, to facilitate administration for our investors. Looking at cryptocurrency specifically, there are a lot of considerations in the United States that make it fairly challenging to work with cryptocurrency. And also, in many cases, it's not even clear if the United States is going to retroactively impose changes in the future that could affect current involvements. So looking at blockchain and cryptocurrency investing in particular, it really makes a lot of sense for us. It allows a wider variety of investors to be able to contribute from around the world. It allows for easier administrative access for those investors, and it allows more options for our investors as well to be able to get access to different types of cryptocurrency investment that might be more challenging in the United States.
One word, as a crypto guy, Malta or Switzerland?
I would say Switzerland is the one of the two that I'm most optimistic about, but have also worked with some folks out of Malta and can see some advantages there.
Thanks. Benjamin, please. Pro and cons?
Yes, for me, with the Ethical Mineral Mining Fund, with of course a humanitarian aspect, with our goal to not only generate revenue for our investors, but also to develop the economy surrounding the mine in the developing countries. And in fact, with majority of our mines in South America, Africa, Haiti, and the Caribbean, made, of course, for me, the logical decision to go to Cayman.
Okay, so what are the advantages basically to be offshore for you, Benjamin? And what are the advantages, like in general, to be not offshore? Like,
well, in the U.S. versus Cayman, there's asset protection, there's tax breaks depending on the country in which you live in. You can have a tax benefit. There's also a broader range of investment and privacy. Of course, there's increased regulatory scrutiny and higher cost offshore.
Okay, so scrutiny, I like scrutiny. So he speaks already about, okay, David speaks. It's so unusual for me that like the Zoom conferences. I apologize for this. So David spoke already about uncertainty here in the United States and scrutiny. And we have the money, which say it like regulation, pressure, and so on. So can everyone give me an example of scrutiny which are faced when you have an offshore account, which is probably a scrutiny which you face here? As you brought up the word scrutiny, it's up to you to say it first.
Yeah, there's a FATCA, Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, which the IRS states that any US citizens need to declare their portfolios worldwide, and any companies using offshore to evade income taxes on capital gains will be prosecuted for tax evasion.
Probably Damani, what is your take on scrutinies for US investors going to a hedge fund in Cayman Island, where your hedge fund is located? Does it have advantages still to go offshore, or are you just like a target now for the IRS? And I have to say here one thing. This is a general discussion. Everyone will have to visit his own legal counsel and CPA to follow the rules. I did not say this at the beginning. I apologize. I have to say this disclaimer. It's written here really big that from our legal counsel that I have to say it at the beginning of this discussion. So, Tamani, please.
From the IRS perspective, I do echo Benjamin's sentiments. For me, the major piece of scrutiny that I think as a fund manager that sticks out to me the most is just the monitoring by the regulators. So for example, funds that operate both in Cayman as well as stateside tend to be more under the microscope or more in the crosshairs of the SEC. Even if you're operating within rules and regulations, there's just something about funds that have offshore accounts and offshore funds, but are headquartered and have their main business here in the States. It just makes them uncomfortable to the point where you may find yourself in more communication with the regulators than you would if you were only operating in the United States. They have a lot more questions. There's a lot more due diligence and a lot more combing through the operation of your fund, especially from a KYC perspective. There's also, depending on where offshore you are, there is the worry that funds will have investors that wouldn't be able to clear the process here, right? So they want to make sure that your capital in your fund isn't coming from certain organizations or certain institutions that the United States government has issues with. So a lot of times it doesn't really create a problem in terms of operating the business, but it does put you in the crosshairs and it does make things a little tighter for you as far as how you operate.
Okay, so also as you were speaking before, like structures which are possible offshores, which are not possible offshores. We know that one big thing which is really offshore, like really the attractive thing is the segregated portfolio companies. Just for, I know everyone here is a specialist, everyone knows what it is. For people looking the videos later on, which maybe more lay person, segregated portfolio companies are companies which are one company, but they can segregate the assets, the liabilities, but they have to follow certain regulations. So is this an advantage offshore, or there also something in the United States? So Benjamin, what can you say about segregated portfolio companies, and what do you think, offshore or United States?
Well, for me, offshore for what I'm doing, but it really isn't a one size shoe fits all. It's really depending on your goal and the tool. You know, a segregated portfolio company being a company where the assets and liabilities are shelled from the assets and liabilities that are also under that one company, and they're segregated to protect that liability. That being the case, depending on your goal, you might want to be in Malta or Switzerland or offshore or US, depending on what goal you're trying to reach.
There were some issues with segregated portfolio companies in Delaware. Can somebody emphasize on this?
Yes. Segregated portfolio companies are called segregated cells or series LLCs or a cell LLC. That's America's version of a segregated portfolio company. And even though this is allowed in Delaware, the legal status changes from, the problem is that it changes from state to state, and in trial, it is not established enough the precedence. So in my opinion, you need a really good lawyer to do it domestically.
David, any ideas on segregated portfolio companies, or is it?
Well, I think Ben covered the legal aspects quite thoroughly, and certainly, as he said, good to talk with an excellent lawyer on this stuff. But from the investor perspective, I find them interesting because of the kind of consolidated management component of it, while also affecting more of a kind of a diversified risk portfolio. So if you think about something like, say, more of a banking relationship, most people they'll prefer to work with, one banker or one bank around, their checking account, their savings account, their credit card, all these sorts of things. And I think that's something that's in general a little less common in the investing world, where maybe you invest in one fund in Europe, and another fund in North America, another one in Asia, and so you have kind of a lot of kind of a spread out relationship with the investment vehicles, and I find these portfolio companies very interesting because it kind of has that sort of back to the future component, where it brings that kind of traditional kind of localized relationship into the investing world in a way that's valuable for the investor, where they know that they can go to one centralized resource, but then they also know that there are separate buckets from the diversification and risk management perspective.
Also for this, it makes us Chain BLX, it makes it possible for us to have 12 investment funds segregated in the Cayman Islands, operating under one company, but each company underneath operating in different capacities.
Yeah, this is wonderful. So when you speak of offshore banking, a lot of people think it's really easy to get a bank account, but it's really not so easy. But we have always to see, and this is not one shoe fits all. Some of the offshore banking are really crypto-friendly, like Malta, some like Switzerland. Some are really hesitant to take crypto in. Cannabis, for example, you can have traded on a stock in Canada, but in America it's illegal to get even a bank account. And please don't try to make a crypto cannabis bank account in Cayman Islands. It's not possible. So it's really important to look what is your goal by offshore banking. The goal, it's not every location is the right location. It's not always that one shoe fits all. You have to look also in different offshore locations for possibilities if there is a tax when the money leaves the offshore location. And there's a different ramification to invest. You have to look at your home country, what is allowed to do. You have to look also at the local regulations in the offshore in the offshore location which you choose. We have 11:23. We have probably. So, a question for Damani. Damani, you
Yes.
have a fund in Cayman Island, basically an investment fund, which is what do you see for leverages, which you can do offshore, which you could not do, and how is it? Is it a leverage over lockup period, or is it a leverage that when you go in private equity, that basically there is a tax haven, and as the fund and the company is located there, that till the money is repatriated, that it can appreciate it? Can you speak about this?
I think the leverages are more so on the tax haven side from a private equity perspective, and as well, it's a little of both. For me, the biggest thing would be the lockup periods and the flexibility there, simply because, especially in my space with Apex, a lot of our investment time horizons are a little different, and our investment structures are a little different. So I think the biggest thing for me, or the biggest advantage, is there's a lot more flexibility with the Cayman fund than in the US fund.